They'll just come, I think. Is Gerdien from the Netherlands, is she online now?
Thanks a lot, Claire. Thank you for the invitation at your final conference, and I'm very sorry that I cannot be there in person. But I have a general assembly of my own project in Uppsala in Sweden, so it was a bit difficult to combine with Brussels. But luckily we start at 12 o'clock, so I had time this morning. I'm the coordinator of the DECIDE project, and Claire asked me to tell you a little bit what our project was about. It's, let's see whether the slides move now. Yes, it's a 5-year project. We started 4 years ago with a budget of about 10 million, 20 partners in 11 different countries, a combination of universities and private entities. The goal of the DECIDE project was to develop data-driven decision support tools and workflows that enable farmers, vets, other animal health managers to improve and control prevalent, endemic, contagious animal diseases based on a multidimensional burden of disease metric. And with multidimensional burden of disease, we mean not only the economics, but also the burden on welfare, the burden on antimicrobial use, the burden of the environment, etc. We focus on young and growing animals, pigs, broilers, calves, and also the most important aquatic species, or a important aquatic species, salmon. For calves, pigs, and poultry, we focus on gastrointestinal and respiratory tract infections because we think those are the major infections causing losses in these animals. And for salmonids, specific pathogens that are related to growth reduction and mortality. So endemic diseases that may spread, have the highest impact, lead direct or indirectly to antimicrobial usage, and negatively influence the value chain of animal protein production. This is an overview of how the project is organized in the technical work packages. We have to create decision support tools for farmers and vets. And that is led by work package 3, the data-driven decision support tools. Before we started creating tools, we asked the farmer and the vets what they need. What are the stakeholder needs? And that is done with a technical social science work package 5. Of course, for data-driven tool, we need data. So we have a work package 1, data science, looking at what data is there, existing data, sensor data, how can we access it, and how can we reuse it for the purpose of decision support. We have a modeling work package that creates early warning systems based on data so that the farmer or vet gets a warning when there are aberrations in animal health. But we also model disease spreads and see what control measures can be taken and how they rank in reduction of disease spread and preventing losses. And that brings me to the work package 4, the economic and welfare work package, where we look at the disease burden, the economic impact of it, but also at animal welfare, looking at ranking of diseases, because usually there are many endemic diseases in a farm. Which one are we going to focus on, and which is causing the most problems in a herd and flock? On top of this work package structure, we also have data leaders for poultry, pigs, cattle, and salmonids. So to make sure that the decision support tools are well established in the domain, in the animal domain of these experts, so that we are sure that it's used in poultry, pigs, cattle, or salmonids. And then Claire asked the question, how did you address data collection and collation? And are there any lessons that are useful for TechCare or other projects? But we had a whole work package on data science, our work package 1, led by Mil Hostens and Sabine Farfillon. And there was a PhD student in this work package as well, Saba Noor from the University of Ghent. And they focused on data identification, characterization, and acquisition, and explored approaches how they could access data, use it to support animal health. They developed species-specific ontologies and also are still working on alternate approaches for data access. So in simple words, not bringing the data to the modelers, but bring the model to the data. And we call that federated approaches. In our first deliverable, we looked at this availability and suitability of data, animal health data. And we created a catalog of all the data sets used in the project. Information about these data sets and what the sharing rules were to be able to use this data. And we evaluated compliance with GDPR and FAIR principles. We did that with an online survey involving all the DECIDE participants. And we had 19 respondents, of which 11 were from public-private organizations. And 63% said that they never applied the FAIR principles to their data. We had in total 30 data sets at the time, and the majority of them were to support animal production. At farm level, support the quality or the quantity of production. There were data sets for surveillance purposes, and there were data sets that were collected because of compliance with legislation, and some other causes, but these were the main three reasons why data was collected on animal health. Most data was in tabular formats, 25 of the data. 4 were real relational databases, and there was 1 data set that only consisted of PDF files. And if you look at the description of the data, what you call the metadata, there were 14 data sets with no metadata whatsoever. And then the rest had some metadata, and only 1 data set was completely prescribed in metadata. So data sharing is actively occurring within the DECIDE project. We are creating a lot of tools and we are using a lot of data, but it's done in the old way. Just you have data, I'd like your data, we make a contract and you share your data with me and you tell me what's in the data and we discuss, and that's the way I can use it. So if you want to easily have access data and reuse it, you need metadata. And there's a huge lack of that. And you can't be fair if there is no metadata. How can your data be findable when it's nowhere described what it's about? So we decided that there's a huge need for training and more applied guidelines in how you manage data and how you can govern your data at the community level so that it can be reused. There's a whole paper on it. It's recently published, so feel free to have a look at it. It's really interesting to see, even though we are a huge group of data scientists, epidemiologists, we don't deal with data very well. What we also did in the project was develop species-specific ontologies. And I'm definitely not an expert on ontologies. If you want to know more about the technical details, you can ask Miel Hostens or Saba Noor. But in simple words, in the normal data sharing, you have all these different databases on the left side. Then you clean and validate the data and you make one format for the data. And that is what you use in dashboards or whatever you want to visualize it in. With ontologies, you also have these different databases, but you map it, you make a rich data format. You map it to the ontologies, and based on that, you get similar parameters, and you can create dashboards. The advantage is that if you have another set of data with maybe slightly other parameters, you just map it once to this rich data format again, and you can easily upload it in the system. So with ontologies, there's no need to rewrite or clean code every time new data comes in. And that was a huge advantage in our project. And it made it, for example, possible to have a cattle barometer for different countries in Europe, and they all provide the data in different languages, but that doesn't matter with the ontologies that we created. So the cattle barometer started off with just 2 labs in Belgium, And now we have labs from the Netherlands, France, and Ireland also providing their data in this barometer. We also created a pig barometer and a broiler barometer and a salmon barometer. And that was done very, very quickly. Just in 1 or 2 weeks, there is a new barometer. Or in a day, you can add a lab to this barometer. So the creation of ontologies was vital for making tools like this. But to be able to create ontologies, you need metadata. There needs to be a description of what's in the data so that you can map the data to this rich data format. We published about our findings in scientific literature, and we were also organizing workshops. For example, one at the Precision Livestock Farming Conference to try to promote people to use to create metadata and use ontologies. And the ontologies that were created in our project are public. Anybody can use them and find them. So feel free to have a look at them. They're on GitHub and can be used by any other tool or any other project. So there is lots of animal health data collected. It's usually not collected for the purposes that we have in mind when we are thinking about decision support tools. Access is challenging because there is no metadata. Sometimes you don't know which data exists. And we'll, as the community, scientific community on animal health and welfare, need a shared vision on how we can improve this data skills so that in future, data-driven animal health surveillance can be improved by using better data. And we do need this because using this data will enable us to better control endemic infectious diseases, which is an important pillar of sustainable animal production. If you want to know more about the tools that we are creating in these sites, you can go to our web page, and if you click on one of these animals, you get the species-specific tools, such as the cattle barometer and the pig barometer, and you can see what we are working on currently. And I'd like to thank you for your attention, and I'm happy to answer any question if there are any. And see if I can now stop sharing my screen.
Thank you, Gerdien. That was very interesting. Any question in the audience? There is 2 microphones. Eva, yeah.
Hello, good morning. Bonjour. This is Eva. It was very interesting to listen to you and your work. Thank you very much. I would like to ask you if you have any data exchange or any collaboration with the European Partnership Project on Animal Health and Welfare, since it is coordinated by Ghent University also. So this is the question, please. Thank you.
Thank you for your question. Yes, not so much during the DECIDE project, but of course, the people from Ghent were part of our, were a partner in our project. And I'm now slightly involved with the second internal projects of the partnership in the surveillance for animal health and welfare objective.
Okay.
There is an online question from Jan Ledoux.
Yeah.
He or she?
He, yeah.
He. He's asking, will this project collect data on antibiotic usage across participating countries?
Did you hear that, Gerdien?
Yeah, and I can see it in the chat as well. Yes, for some relevant diseases we do, but more, we're not collecting as much as data, but of course, antimicrobials are often used as a treatment for some of the, for example, bovine respiratory disease or porcine respiratory disease complex. And we are modeling transmission of these diseases and the effectiveness of antibiotics, and try to convince farmers to use other methods than antimicrobials, because we think it's a negative burden when you use too much antimicrobials. On the other hand, you can see that it's a very cheap and effective option sometimes to use antimicrobials. So we're trying to help farmers with showing them the data and deciding on what is the best option in their case at that time for that disease. But we're not a project that is collecting antimicrobial data across countries to show that how high or low it is. It's more used in the tools.
Okay, thank you. I think there was a question here, Bas, yeah.
Yeah, Bas Rodenburg, hi Gerdien. I had a question about the cattle barometer and the other barometers. The word barometer implies that it's sort of real time, that is actually measuring what is happening now. Can you say a bit how did you manage that, or is it still looking back to historic data? How do you manage?
The version that you find on the website now is a version with, say, old data, quarterly data. But we now manage to at least have, with the Dutch laboratory, Royal GD, we have an automatic data sharing. So that's where the federated access comes from. So we have a federated method, and the data is every day, or every week, we can choose how frequently we want to do that, is uploaded to the system and automatically put in the dashboard. So for one lab, we now managed to do that this federated way, and we're now trying to see whether we can do that with the other labs. It's a piece of software that is probably quite easily transferred to other laboratory information systems as well. So with that software, we can hopefully do it for the other labs as well. But indeed, the plan is to have it up to date, and maybe daily is too frequent because you need a certain amount of new information to make it valuable, to make it a daily thing. But weekly or monthly is definitely possible.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. Any other question for Gerdien? Oh yeah, Paul.
Yeah. Do you have any information on the environmental impact of the endemic diseases that you were looking at?
So far, we're only focusing on that in salmon because the calves, pigs, and poultry are more in barns, and if salmon is an open production, so as soon as you use medicine or when there are, for example, salmon lice, sea lice, then also the wild population is at risk. So for salmon, we are modeling that. For the other species, not so much.
Okay. Was there a new question from the room?
Other question.
Okay. Thank you very much, Gerdien. It's a shame you can't be with us, but thanks very much. Very, very interesting.
Thank you for the invitation.
So we're still a bit ahead of schedule, but Paul, do you want to come and talk about ClearFarm?
Well, good morning. First, let me thank the invitation of Tech Care Consortium to attend this final meeting. I still have memories of when we did this last year during the last also conference of ClearFarm. And I'm sure Claire and all the coordination team will have some sense of relief after the end of today. So I've been asked to give an overview of the main results and outcomes of ClearFarm. So I prepared a few slides explaining what we have done and, most importantly, what we have learned during that process. The first thing I would like to start with is about the structure and the concept of ClearFarm. We tend to say that ClearFarm was a sister project of TechCare because we were funded with the same call as TechCare, and we pursued very similar aims. So the two projects were actually very similar. The only difference, perhaps I would focus, is on the species, as we were focusing on pigs and dairy cows instead of sheep and goats. However, the structure, as you can see here on the slide, our aim was to use several sensor technologies and information that can be automatically recorded at the farm in order to inform a platform. We called it the ClearFarm platform that could be used to inform or go in two different directions. The first is for farmers, of course. So we pretend ClearFarm to be a tool for farmers' assistance so they can take better decisions when addressing any welfare issue in any of these two species. But also, and we believe it's important as well, we identified another direction in which the information from ClearFarm platform could also go, which is to inform consumers when making decisions in purchasing. So we identified several business models that this could be, this could work in these two different ways of this information. And what was the information we used for feeding the platform? From now on, I will focus on dairy cows. So any examples I will give from now on will be on the ClearFarm platform related to dairy cattle. And in dairy cows, we identified several origins or sources for input data, which included collars, so basically accelerometers, but also GPS collars in extensive conditions, rumen boluses to assess, for instance, temperature, humidity, but also, pH, and also the activity, GPS, and also information that was automatically retrieved from farms and cooperatives. Other sources of data could also be linked to vet records. As you know, this is something that it's mandatory to be recorded in European farms, but also milking robots and data from the environment, for instance, environmental sensors. That created a set of aggregated data, which we somehow summarize in this quite a large number of traits that we included somehow in our platform. So you can see that there are from behavioral traits like walking time, lying time, etc. Also traits about diseases, diarrhea, and also the medicines, antibiotics that were used to treat these animals, etc. With all these traits, we created what was the final outcome or the principal outcome of ClearFarm. And this is this layout, as you can see on your left side of the slide, which is the principal or the main overall view of the platform, where farmers could access and identify the animals, whether they are in good, moderate, or poor welfare, and in which condition. Let me drive you through the platform. So on the left-hand side of the platform, you can see the global index score in terms of animal welfare. for each specific animal, and that was stratified into 3 different domains. One is feed, health, and housing. Unfortunately, we could not include the behavioral domain in terms of welfare, and that was already highlighted and considered as a challenge, a gap which should be addressed in further developments. However, as you can see, that already allowed an identification of every single animal at the farm and their welfare score at overall terms, and then more specifically in which domain that specific cow was affected. Our aim was that ClearFarm tool was something useful for the farmer to identify which is the main welfare issue or the specific welfare issue that should be addressed in the short term. That created also a system to alert farmers when any specific disease problem should be addressed. So on the right-hand side of the slide, you can see here the alert to the farmer that that specific cow was affected by a disease such as mastitis, lameness, or any other that could be identified using the traits that I showed in the previous slide. So this was our tool that we designed in order to assist farmers for a better and more efficient in terms of welfare. Also, ClearFarm platform was addressing the environmental impact. So we somehow identified animal welfare and environmental impact being the 2 main issues having an importance or an interest for European consumers. So we also include the environmental impact in the platform. We used a completely different assessment method. So for environmental impact, we used life cycle assessment, but farmers could also access to the data being automatically collected from the farm and end up with a picture on the level of greenhouse gas emissions, excuse me, or warming potential of the farm. So having or giving them the capacity to benchmark the farm in terms of greenhouse gas emissions compared to other farms also part of ClearFarm. And then, as I mentioned, in addition to assisting farmers for better management and improved welfare, the aim of ClearFarm was also to assist consumers. And for that, we created the other output, which is this labeling or certification tool that could be used to take the same information collected from the farms in order to inform consumers about the global index of welfare, as you can see here on the main green heart that you can see on the smartphone. But that could also be detailed in the different domains. So consumers may not only access the global welfare score, but also have a more detailed information. And that we designed several business models, one of which could be using a QR code that consumers can use or when doing the purchase. Our intention was not and is not to create another label at a European perspective, but instead to assist other certification labels, such as those that are currently being used in different European countries, that they can use this tool for their assurance or their certification schemes. Yeah, just a few examples and some certification levels in which we collaborated. For instance, RSPCA was part of our advisory group. So this is pretty much what we did, and somehow what we achieved during ClearFarm. But certainly there are some aspects that we believe deserve a lot of attention, which are the lessons learned. The first is that we realized that an integrated assessment considering most of the welfare domains to assess animal welfare at this farm using sensor technologies is possible. However, we identified few challenges that need further investigation, further work in the future. The first is that we need more validated technologies. So the number of technologies, at least in pigs, also in dairy cows, that are validated, so scientifically robust, in which we can trust, are still very few compared to the large amount of technologies available. Secondly, we need to put more attention in all domains of animal welfare, because at the moment there is a clear focus on animal health. We should not forget about other behaviors, other domains such as behavior or the emotional status of animals. We also realized that it may benefit farmers, so this is possibly the main gain we can get of using sensor technologies, but also can be used for other purposes, and that what we created alternative the business models, for instance, labeling, and that can assist existing welfare labels. We should be creative in developing new or adapted business models in order to think about alternatives on farmers paying for the technologies. Every time we go to the farm, we understand or we listen the same claim. Farmers cannot afford the price this is taking. And I think this is a fair demand. So we should be more creative in thinking alternative ways of implementing PLF technologies. Otherwise, this will be hard to happen in the short term. And finally, future developments should combine all stakeholders' perspective. Farmers' needs, of course, but also the technology availability and their validity, and finally the consumers' expectations. And this is what I prepared for today, and now maybe it's time for questions, if we have time for so. Okay.
There is an online question from Jan Ledoux, that technologies measure information at individual animal level. How do you integrate this to provide a herd welfare measure to present to the consumer or a farm assurance scheme?
I'm not sure I got that. So how this could be presented?
How do you integrate this information to provide a herd welfare measure?
Yeah.
To present to the consumer or to a farm assurance scheme?
Sure. Well, we created a two-level integration model. So a first level was to integrate different traits into one domain. For instance, if we want to assess health, we'll consider lying time of cows, as this is affected by health. But also somatic cell count to identify whether this is about mastitis or not, the body temperature to identify fever, for instance. So the integration of these different traits will inform about either health or comfort or nutritional status, etc. Then a second level of integration would be giving weights to all these different domains into a final global welfare score. Of course, here the challenge is, and was, I can tell you, to assign weights on what is more important in terms of welfare or to reach that global welfare score. I can tell you that our approach was, let's not spend time on deciding about whether health is more important than comfort or the reverse. We assigned the same weight to all welfare domains. Of course, this can be arguable, but that was our decision by the time.
Was it on the herd level? Was it for the farm or was it for one animal?
That was for individual animal in terms of cows. However, that information at individual level was provided to farmers. However, for certification schemes, that would be provided at a herd or farm level.
Thanks, Paul. Really interesting. And I think we're all a little bit jealous of the amount of data you already had available to you at the start of the project that you could integrate into this platform. Do you think you have, with the data that you already have, do you think you have the capacity to also look at the behavioral domain? Or do you think, so could you integrate the information you currently have to understand that? Or do you think there's something missing, something extra that would need to be developed to do that?
Yeah, by that time, well, I have to say that we focused only on sensors that were validated. That restricted us a lot or our availability of technologies. But certainly the domain that was more less developed in terms of sensors was the behavioral domain. We couldn't identify, that was on 2021, any commercial sensor available to assess, for instance, social behavior in dairy cows or any other forms of behavior that could affect their welfare. So that was the reason we decided not to include the behavioral domain. Maybe in the existing technologies nowadays, this could be available.
It was very interesting, your approach to the business models using a QR code. But did you have difficulty marrying that with the very different standards that some of the welfare labeling provides?
Certainly. I think the current welfare labels, and that was an outcome of ClearFarm, we published a manuscript on the existing labels in Europe, most of them focusing on research-based measures, whereas ClearFarm is definitely focused on animal-based measures. I think if certification levels would, or welfare levels would like to use ClearFarm platform as a tool to gather information and to provide that to consumers, they need to make a change, a switch towards more animal-based measures. I don't think the existing, or at least most of the existing certification levels could adopt ClearFarm that could be a significant change, I would say.
Yeah, Paul, I was wondering about your direct communication to consumers in the app, so to say. How does that compare to trying to influence retailers to take animal welfare seriously? And did you involve retailers in this translation from the farm to the consumer? Because I can imagine it's much more difficult to influence individual consumers rather than a chain or through a welfare label, for instance.
Yeah, indeed, that's a very interesting question, because I'm going now to tell some anecdotes on when building the consortium. So we were desperate on finding a retailer to be part of the consortium because we identified retailers being a major player in these decisions. Unfortunately, we couldn't find a major retailer to be part of the consortium, but what we did is later on when the project started, we included them. We included one retailer as part of our advisory board, providing with some advice on how. Through the project, I think we realized that if it's something that we already didn't know before, that retailers have a massive impact on this decision, on what will be, and importantly, how will be communicated to consumers. Yeah.
Thank you for the presentation. There is a question from the colleague from Sardinia, from the IGP LAMB, Sardinia LAMB. That question is if there is a risk to have too much transparency, too much knowledge by the consumer regarding all the data.
Yeah. Well, I'm not sure transparency is a risk. Perhaps, but indeed, and I completely agree with you or your colleague that industry may not be interested to give all transparency because there is uncertainty on how this will affect decision-making at purchase. I agree with this somehow concern. Our approach was to focus on the development of the tool. So here, there it is, the tool. This is what you can do with all this information. And then the level of data availability or restriction is up to the producer, retailer, somebody else. We focused on developing the tool.
Another question.
Thank you.